recently Firefox hit its 109 release, and with that came a bunch of bug fixes, feature additions, feature changes, things you generally expect to see in an update. But most importantly, enabling Manifest v3, more commonly known as MV3, by default. Now, MV3 is probably one of the most controversial web changes in a very, very long time. The short version of the story is it leads to the extreme limitation, or in most cases, effective breakage of content blockers like uBlock Origin. There is an MV3 version of uBlock Origin, but it doesn't block anywhere near as much as you would be used to. But Mozilla isn't just making a change, trying to ruin everyone's day. They've outlined their plans for quite a while, but everything is sort of subject to change until it's in the hands of the user. So with this new change, all of your MV2 extensions will continue working. They'll remain enabled and they'll remain supported. So if you simply don't want to worry about the problem for now, you really don't have to. You can just keep doing things as you're doing and think about it later. And this is probably for the best, because most of the extensions you want to be using, even things that are not content blockers, are not updated to MV3. If they just went full in on MV3, they would have nothing in the plugin store. And this is the exact reason why Chromium delayed their phase out of MV2. Even some of their first-party extensions are not using MV3. But while I'm sure they could, the plan going forward isn't to maintain MV2 forever. The point of using Manifest is to have this consistent way of developing plugins for every single browser. Doesn't matter if it's Chromium, Firefox, Safari, we're dealing with the same set of APIs, making this considerably easier. And when we get to the point where Chromium only offers MV3, the amount of people who are going to care about MV2 is going to be considerably less. So Mozilla wanted a more long-term solution. A long-term solution where they don't lose support for these content blockers. In a recent blog post from Mozilla, they say this: with that, we agreed to introduce Manifest v3 support for add-ons, maintaining a high level of compatibility to support cross-browser development. However, there are some critical areas, like security and privacy, where our principles call for a different course of action. In a few targeted areas, we decided to depart from Chrome's implementation and incorporate our own distinctively Mozilla elements. Thus, Firefox's version of Manifest v3 will provide cross-browser extension interoperability, the point of using Manifest, along with uniquely improved privacy and security safeguards and enhanced compatibility for mobile extensions. I'm not exactly sure what they mean by this, but the thing about security and privacy, that means they're going to keep things around like the blocking web request. Use the web request API to observe and analyze traffic and to intercept, block, or modify requests in flight. And also, declarative net request. The declarative net request API is used to block or modify network requests by specifying declarative rules. This lets extensions modify network requests without intercepting them and viewing their content, thus providing more privacy. Both of these are basically fundamental to the way that things like uBlock Origin function. So while this does mean that content blockers can be made to work properly in Firefox's version of MV3, it doesn't mean that those old MV2 extensions will just magically work in MV3. They will need to be redesigned with MV3 in mind, and then using this mix and match API designed kind of specifically with Firefox in mind. But I think that's ultimately better than simply not working properly altogether. I can't imagine there's going to be a wide array of plugins making use of this modified version of MV3. Most of the MV3 extensions on Firefox are just gonna use the core set of MV3. But when it comes to things like uBlock Origin, where privacy, security really matters, I could see a bunch of those making use of this going into the future. Now, even though the criticism that MV3 gets with content blockers is totally valid, when it comes to things that aren't content blockers, MV3 isn't actually all bad and does offer some really neat additions. So let's say we have an MV2 extension like Google Translate. Google Translate is given access to every single website you go to. If the extension is enabled, it can read data on anything you do. Now, obviously, you can turn the extension off, but while the extension is on, it has uniform access to everything. Some plugins might choose not to use that data. Some plugins might even provide an internal way like uBlock Origin to disable it on certain sites. But there's no way that is generally applicable, no global setting to disable individual plugins on individual websites. That is until MV3. So with this update, Firefox also added an updated version of the extensions button. Now, one thing I don't like about this is it's literally stuck to your interface. You cannot move it, you cannot remove it, it is going to be exactly where it is. That's annoying. But what it does is really cool. So with your MV2 extensions, basically just lets you have a list of them here, have your settings easily accessible, things like that. With your MV3 extensions, this also includes something really neat. So if an extension wants to get access to a website and it doesn't already have access, it's going to give you a little notification, a little blue dot here that isn't really that annoying. It's much better than seeing a giant number. And then if you go to the extension, you can decide when it can actually access the website. When you click on the extension, always on that website, things like that. Most extensions you'd probably just want to have set on always, but there are some like maybe a Translate extension where you only want it to have access that second that you click on it. But that's sort of going to be up to the way that you want to work and how much you trust these extensions and how much you care about your privacy, things like that. Also, I just noticed, isn't that a Mac context menu? I don't know why the demo here is in Mac, but it is what it is. Now, with that being said, that doesn't mean that you should just blindly install extensions you don't know anything about, you don't trust, because you're probably going to have all of your data stolen. Just because you have these tools available to limit when an extension can access data, doesn't mean you should just do things in a really dumb way. But if you do really care about your privacy and really care exactly when your data is being exposed, even to plugins you trust, like uBlock Origin, I can totally understand why you might want to go and use this. It absolutely makes sense why you might want to go and use this. Now, the reason why I'm using the demo on the blog post rather than my own version of Firefox is the Firefox web store, extension store, plugin store, whatever it's called, doesn't have a filter for MV3. I have no idea what's in MV3 without going just installing things randomly. You'd think that maybe like the first party Firefox extensions would be MV3. At least the ones that I tried, they weren't. So if anybody from Mozilla is listening right now, please add a filter for MV3. Thank you. And speaking of Mozilla, this blog post has one hilarious section. So if we scroll all the way down here, can I remove the extensions button from the toolbar or customize its location? No, it is currently not possible to remove this button or change the location. This is by design. Fair enough, whatever. If you feel strongly about needing to move the button, you can join in and vote on the following ideas thread on the Mozilla Connect feedback site, where users can propose changes for future versions of Firefox. So you're fully aware that people want to be able to move the button. There's 6 pages here, and you're like, you know what? Let's just not move the button. You know enough that people want it to be moved to mention it in a blog post, but you don't just make it movable. My only guess is the person who wrote the blog post wants it to be movable as well. Otherwise, I don't see why you would mention it without also making it movable. But maybe I'm just overthinking it, which is entirely possible. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Let me know your thoughts about this mismatch MV2, MV3 thing. Let me know what you think about MV3 just generally. And yeah, that's going to be it for me. So if you liked the video, remember to go and like the video. And if you really like the video and want to become one of these amazing people over here, go check out my Patreon, subscribe to Steadily Bearer Pay, linked in the description down below. That's going to be it for me, and I'm out.